Hello, whiskey folk, he says, standing in for Mr. Roy Duff, who is in Campbelltown enjoying the Campbelltown Malts Festival. I hope you are all well. I hope you can see and hear me well. For those, well, we'll go into the chat in a minute, but I would dare say most of the people, I've been sort of scanning through the chat, and most of you know me already. I will introduce myself quickly because I rarely do that. Anybody who doesn't know me, I am Jim, the whiskey novice. And every now and again, when Roy is off enjoying himself doing something else, he asks me to step in, and I'm always pleased to do so. That's Roy Duff, of course, because anybody who doesn't, is anybody that's just watching this but doesn't watch the Vpub, get yourselves over to the activated Vpub next Thursday and most Thursdays. I just realized that I had nothing in my glass, so in honor of the Campbelltown Malts Festival on this week, I am going to pour myself a relatively freshly opened Hazelburn 10-year-old, just a wee drop in the bottom of the glass, just to wet the glass and raise to you, my friends, barflies, Highlands, whatever you call yourselves, and say, Sláinte mhath. I hope you're all well. I hope you're looking after yourselves. Oh, the Hazelburn 10-year-old never lets me down, never lets me down. So we do have a topic tonight. It is a bit thrown together. I did think to myself after I sort of threw this together, so I'll give you a bit of context as to what happened. Roy asked me late last week if I wanted to do this tonight, asked me if I was available, and as I said, I rarely, even if I wasn't, I'll try and make myself available for it just to help the man out. And I sort of generally, I will jump at the chance because I usually have a subject that's been sort of eating away at the inside of my head that I want to talk about, but I just don't do as many live streams anymore because I don't feel like as if I just don't really have the time to do them as much. So whenever an opportunity arises for a live stream, then I'm ready for it. In this case, I wasn't so ready for it. However, these things almost write themselves because I did have a short recorded around 5 whiskey distilleries, 5 major producers that we, the whiskey community, don't really talk about anymore. If you didn't see that short, I have it queued up and I'll put it on in a minute whenever we've got there. As soon as that entered my mind, I thought, well, then, I'll make sure that short is ready for Monday of this week. So as it led into what I was going to do tonight. And then all the demons start to enter in and they go, why was I not doing something on Campbelltown? Why was I not, the Campbelltown Malts Festival's on this week. Why was I not talking about it? And I should have been. I know I probably should have been, or something relating to Campbelltown. But by that point, it's not to say it was too late. It's been a busy week. So it was easy just to rely on what I'd already set up and just say, well, let's just go with what I've already set up and try and make it work. It's a very, very difficult thing. I don't know. I've said it many times in the past. I don't know how Roy keeps it fresh every week. It's a very, very difficult thing to come up with a topic and make it seem hot. Everything feels like as if it's been talked to death, and that was tonight's subject's no different really. But I've never really given my twist on it before. So this has been in the glass a minute. It's just anybody who's just joined. It is a little Hazelburn 10-year-old in celebration of the Campbelltown Malts Festival. So sláinte to all of you. Sláinte mhath. And as per usual, we'll get into the chat quickly. Take a look, see who's about, and then we'll get, one thing I do want to tell you. This will probably not be the longest of live streams. It'll certainly not be one of Roy's 3 hour marathons that he had last week. Um, it's as I said, I'm actually off work at the minute, and I'm off work because I'm busy doing stuff at home, and then I'm going to Campbelltown on Saturday for the last day of the Campbelltown Malts Festival, and then I'm coming home on Saturday evening from the Campbelltown Malts Festival. I'm going to Glasgow on Sunday morning for a few days with the family. More about that. More about that. Let's get into the chat, see who's about, and then we'll chat a little further. Sugar Kitty, Jeff in early doors. Meow, Jeff. Good to see you, my friend. Dave and BV, looking forward to following along this evening. That always suggests to me that most times you're not available to actually follow along. Well, Dave, either way, good to have you in. Thank you, my friend. Big Jimmy Jazz, good evening, whiskey folks. Anybody else not in Campbelltown tonight but wish they were? I would imagine there's hands shooting up around the world of whiskey enthusiasts saying, yes, I wish. Anybody that's watching this saying, yes, I wish I were in Campbelltown. Andy Hells, evening from the Wee Toon. I read further on, so this is Andy saying, hello. Frank says hello, and Helen. So Andy, Frank, and Helen, all there in Campbelltown. Good to see you, my friends, and I hope you're all having a great time in Campbelltown. Whiskey and Wine Trails, greetings. Whiskey and Wine Trails, Tom, greetings, fellow Highlands and Barflies. Yes, Jimmy and Andy, I so wish I was back in the Wee Toon. One of these days, we'll all be there together. One of these days. Last year was the first time I was there, and I love it. I fell in love with it instantly. Thomas Jones, good evening, Jim and everyone. Thomas, good to see you. Frank is in. I wasn't expecting to see Frank in here from Hellswood HQ. A very good evening, everyone. I'm in full listening mode today after a severely tough Springbank Open day. Matchsticks to keep my eyes open within arm's reach. Well, fair play to you, Frank. I didn't expect to see you in. And you said it, Andy said it, you're in the background along with Helen and Andy in Macrahanish. And, I take it you're at their place. And, I tend actually, my take on it, festivals. I've never been for the Campbelltown Malts Festival. I'm going, as I said, on Saturday for the last day of the Campbelltown Malts Festival. I've never been to the Fèis because I am not a massive fan of crowds generally. I love the whiskey community. I love seeing people that I know, but I sort of also have to get to know people. This is a bit of wearing my heart on my sleeve here that I don't say very often. This is something that and I have said it in the past, I am actually quite a shy person. I always welcome people saying hello. What I can't get my head quite around is I'm here, my face is here, you can see it. People know what I look like so they can put a name to my face. I struggle with names and faces a bit, so I always panic when I meet people at events and they say, hello, we were speaking at such and such or whatever. And I just, it annoys the hell out of me that I can't remember their name. So things like that just freak me out a bit. It's not like I avoid them for that reason, but I still sort of tend to think of the likes of Campbelltown and Islay as places I think I would rather be when there isn't a festival on, when it's a little calmer and you can sort of relax and enjoy distilleries and the scenery, and just because if there any of you out there have never been to Campbelltown, it's a small. I fell in love with it instantly. It's a small town, but I love the fact that you can just see the whole town in a day. But you don't want to you want to come back the next day. You want to be back the day after that. It's just a beautiful little town. Islay is a different beast altogether. You need transport around that island. It's a bigger island than an awful lot of people take for granted. Anyway, there'll be more blithering about that later on. Let's see. Let's go back down through the chat because I don't want to spend too much time on that. Ian Williamson, evening everyone. No FOMO at all for the Campbelltown Malts Festival. Yeah, right. Good to see you, my friend. Des, always good to see you. Greg's Whiskey Guide. Hi, Whiskey Novice Jim, and everyone. Good evening from Paris. No festival or other shows attending on my side, but still can enjoy some whiskey. Exactly. Okay, just a wee Armoric tasting evening next week. Well, I'm a bit jealous of you there, Greg, because I mean, Armoric, I haven't had a whole lot of it, but what I have had, I loved. Martin introduced me to it, and I thought it was lovely. Billy Bennett, hello. Gus PW, good evening. A new name to me. David W, good evening, folks. Neil Laverty, big pour, my friend. Very small pour, big pour. Good to see you. And Derek McGrader, how are you? Whiskey with Molly Ben. Good evening, Jim, Whiskey Novice, and good evening, Whiskey folk, and good Whiskey folk. Ben and Lee J and myself, it was us that went to Campbelltown last year. It was the first time for all of us, but I would suggest we had a good time. We did see enough of it. We've seen enough of it, but I just want to go back. And I would dare say that Ben and Lee J are the same. That's I've already realised that's Campbelltown to me. Go today, want to go back tomorrow and the next day. Kyle Taylor, how are you? Let's see. I think that's. Hold on. I don't like missing anybody. Paul Gids. Cheers, my friend. Bud Jenkins. I haven't seen you in a live chat in a while, Bud. It's good to see you, my friend. Gene Kelly. Met Gene last year at the Glasgow Whisky Festival, and it was a pleasure. Carl FT, evening all. Lee J's in as well. And I send hello to all the guitar flies. Whiskey pal Jason, who will be going to Campbelltown with us on Saturday. So there's 3 Highlands out of the Highland Battalion group going over on this trip. It'll be an interesting trip. I'll explain a little more in a minute. Jeff Whiskey's in. Pete, how are you? Pete, Jeff, Pete. Alistair Gray, Gary Field. I always like to say hello to everybody if I can. Sandy McDonald. Always a pleasure to see you, my friend. Sandy saying, good evening, Jim. Enjoying the tunes off the island on Sunday. Excellent, Sandy. Good man. Of course, the Fish Ale is next week. So the festival season keeps going. I will say, Sandy said, enjoying the tunes. Appreciate that. I've been putting a bit of music on the socials recently. No more reason than I've just been pissing about in the guitar again. And funny, Willie Doley, or a name that an awful lot of you will know. And Willie messaged about something about this and says, is there going to be a musical interlude? No, absolutely not. I did a live stream many moons ago with the music involved. Can't see that ever happening again, but you never know. But music's sort of entering into my life a little bit again. Little bit, but not, as I say, I'm not going to make a career out of it again. Donner Pass Tim is in. Cheers, Jim, and everyone. Yes, I want to go to places when they are quiet. So thank you. I'm glad it's not just me. Gary Fields off to Campbelltown in late July. Good man, Gary. I no doubt you'll enjoy it. Black Fen, evening all. Evening to you. Hell's with Helen's in as well. There's a guest room here for you always, Helen. Always appreciate it. Thank you. And Ben saying absolute Springbank. Do you know, I was a little devastated late last night. I've got to know, as I know an awful lot of us have in this group, Ali, tour guide from Springbank, one of the tour guides from Springbank. Peruvian Ali is the way I always sort of describe him. I mean, when you sort of put it like that, if you know Ali, there's pretty much one Peruvian tour guide in Springbank, and it's Ali. But I mean, I love the guy. He's a star. Good taste in music too. And I messaged him late last night, just out of curiosity, asking a few questions about things that I don't know whether I'll mention later or not. Not that it's private or anything, but asking about the 12 and the 15, Springbank 12 and 15, because I'm desperate to get my hand on replacements, because I've been drip feeding my last bottles of 12 and 15 to myself for so long, and I just want to replace them, but I just cannot get my hands on them. And like Ali, fair play to him, he just come back and he went, they are long gone. I mean, you know, unless he says, you know, unless there's some stock that just appears, no mission. So it was one of the reasons I was hoping that, you know, if I go this weekend, maybe something. But either way, it doesn't matter. I'm hoping I will come back with something. I will come back with something. I'm going to talk more about Campbelltown, because there's stuff coming into my head that, anyway. Causeway Whiskey, Phil, about you all. Roy has gotten much huskier since I last watched. Anybody out there, give Phil's got a channel going in Florida. Phil Causeway, an awful lot of you would have known him from here, Causeway Phil. Now moved to Florida. He's got a YouTube channel going out there. Give it a watch. It's really, really good. It's really tight, really professional. And he's reviewing whiskies that we all like. He's reviewing whiskey from all around the world. Give him a go, because it's good stuff. Where's Roy? Roy O'Mara, good to see you. Good evening, Whiskey Novice. Good to see you. Papa Q. Jerry, good to see you, my friend. What gems did you bring back from Campbelltown last year? None. I didn't bring anything back because we were flying, Lee J and myself were flying back from Glasgow. And we had no, we just had hand luggage. And so you weren't able to bring back big bottles, and you still aren't out of Glasgow. You can you're allowed 2 litres out of Edinburgh now, but not out of Glasgow. So I didn't bring anything back. And you know, I never intended on bringing anything back. That wasn't what that trip was about for me. The trip last year to Campbelltown for me was just, it was that pilgrimage that we I feel we should all do, and that's what it was about. I didn't care about buying anything, you know. It was always about just being there. So but this time I fully intend to bring something back. Whatever it may be. Should it be an exclusive from this week or whatever, I don't know. All the other things, sorry, I just seen Tim saying Whiskey with the Molly 4 years ago yesterday we met up at the Bon Accord. Today, 4 years ago, I met Roddy at Good Spirits. So that's the other thing. Saturday night, this Saturday, is the closing of the Bon Accord. It's officially the last night of the Bon in Glasgow. And I sort of had it in my head that it was Sunday night. And I'm not saying that so what happened was, this is a story that I had no need to tell you, but it doesn't matter, I'm going to tell you now. My family and I, my wife, my 2 kids, were sitting around the dinner table the other evening. My daughter is doing her GCSE exams at the moment, which means she's in her 4th year of secondary education. My son's doing his A-levels. He's in his lower 6th of A-levels. And they're both in the middle of exams at the moment. And my daughter, and Monday is a bank holiday for us here. So we were all off anyway on Monday, but my daughter then informed us that she was off on Tuesday. My son's off as well. And I said, well, we go somewhere. And I was joking. I was sort of joking. And then it was a joke with an intent. And I instantly went on and looked at hotels in Glasgow. Booked the hotel in Glasgow, booked the flights to Glasgow. So we're going over first thing on Sunday morning. And I thought, I think Sunday night's the last night of the Bon. I'll pop round to the Bon. Messaged Roy about just to see if he was going to be about, because I knew he was going to, that's why he was coming back from Campbelltown when he was coming back. And then I discovered it's Saturday. But that doesn't matter. I'm looking forward to going over to Glasgow for a few days, 3 days, just to go over and, you never know, maybe catch up with a few of the strays from the weekend that I didn't catch up with. Henrik Schmidt, the Whiskey Novice, how easy are accommodation in Campbelltown during festival, increasing distilleries in the future? Pass. That much I don't know. Tom, there's a biodram on me at the washback on Saturday. Tom, I sure will. Thank you, my friend. Accommodation in Campbelltown during the festival, I genuinely don't know. Henrik is the simple answer. We, myself and Ben and Lee J last year stayed in a beautiful, I think it was an Airbnb basically, but it was an old bank in right in the middle of Campbelltown, or just on the other end of the town itself, and it was stunning, absolutely stunning, and it was not expensive. So there's plenty of accommodation if you look for it in Campbelltown, and even if you creep outside Campbelltown a little, it's the entire peninsula is pretty much one way in, one way out. So it's a long trip. It's something that you have to stay. If you're doing Campbelltown, you pretty much have to stay within the reach of Campbelltown to stay up at the top of the entire peninsula or something like that, and then think, you'll just journey it. It's a long trek in and out of there. So it is something that has to be sort of taken into consideration. There's a lot of chat going on, and that's my fault as well, because I'm chatting away in the background. Kay McKenzie, new name to me. Tonight is Glen Scotia 12, 15 and Victoriana, plus a couple of distillery and SMWS releases. Good, man. Well done. Start my mini festival. Tomorrow is Kilkerran, Springbank Saturday, in their spirit. If not in body, well done. Cool runnings. Hey, Jim. Good to see you, mate, and folks in the chat. Cheers. And you. Haven't seen you in a while, Cool Runnings, so cheers. That's me pretty much caught up with the chat. And it's good to see so many of you in. I wasn't expecting so many in, given the fact that the Campbelltown Malts Festival's on. And I wasn't expecting to sort of blether there for over 20 minutes. And I'm probably not done yet. About what's going to happen. So the plan for myself on Saturday and a few and while I'm here, before we get into it, I'll probably go through a wee bit of what's happening with the Whiskey Novice, because this is a good opportunity to get it out there. It makes that sounding as if there's something wrong. There isn't. Saturday, myself, I said there's a couple of other Highlands going over. We are leaving on a boat very early on Saturday morning, straight over to Campbelltown. We're only there for about 6 hours and then back again. Which I'm devastated about. I would love to spend more time there. Just the way it goes. Although I'm hoping that this will happen more in the future, and there's access to this boat now that we can go back and forward and maybe spend a couple of days there. A couple of days in Campbelltown at a time is sort of enough. We discovered last year that your palate can get burnt out very, very quickly. So it's not necessarily, but then that being said, having done the tours in Campbelltown, then you sort of feel, well, is there much point in touring every year the same distillery, the same 3 distilleries over and over again? I mean, so much. I'll go one further and say, when myself and Ben and Lee J were there last year, we were at one point very early on in our couple of days there, we were doing the Glen Scotia warehouse tour or warehouse tasting. I think I maybe told you this one before, but I'll repeat it for anybody that didn't hear it. So the first thing, and I probably shouldn't necessarily be saying this because it maybe sounds a bit bad, but the first thing, we pretty much looked at each other and said, please tell us there isn't a tour of the distillery in this, because honestly, it gets to the point, I certainly feel that when you've seen one distillery, you've seen them all. And in such a small place, in such a short space of time, you can get tired just looking at distilleries and can we just go straight to the warehouse? When we were told there was we will do the warehouse tasting after the distillery tour, it was almost a moment. But No, it was good to see Glen Scotia. It was a very good tour, and we did enjoy it. But what I will say is that in the warehouse tasting, I've never, ever thrown as much quality whiskey on the floor in my life, because our palates, or certainly my palate, was just burnt out. Literally a couple of sips, and just, this incredible straight from the cask whiskey was just getting thrown on the floor, because it's a small place. There's a lot of whiskey being drank in a very short space of time. So I would sort of say, if anybody was going, it's maybe worth planning over a sort of 3-day thing. And there's not a whole lot else to see, but it's a beautiful place. I just like it. Whiskey with Molly says, I never spilt a drop. No, he didn't. That's not because he's greedy. It's just because he's got more stamina than I have. That's what I'll put that down to. But yes, Campbelltown, I am envious of everyone who's there. I am looking forward to getting there on Saturday. I'm looking forward to catching up with as many people as possible. And I hope everybody's enjoying it. So anybody that's just joined, I'm just sipping a Hazelburn 10 just to warm up my palate and just to join in with the festival feeling. But there's and it's a note that I always struggle to remember, that it's not licorice, but there is a hint of licorice of it as well that I never noticed before, certainly on the nose. It's not, actually, I'll tell you what the note is that I usually can't remember. It's aniseed. Weirdly, it's just a note. Aniseed is just a note that I can never remember the name of. It's not that I don't recognize it, I just can never remember the name of it when I need that memory. And it's not aniseed. This is actually a hint of licorice and cereal mixed that I'd never noticed before. But once again, when done right, it works. Very nice. Right, I'm going to put a drop of water. I'm going to actually just rinse that glass, because I'm going to get into the next topic. There's almost 30 minutes gone without touching on the topic. And so the topic is whiskey producers, major whiskey producers, Scotch whiskey producers, that we, the community, don't talk about. And I think it is something, as I say, it's probably been talked to death, but it is something that we should be aware of. And it's something that I'm going to say, Neil Laverty saying Parma Violets for him. I could get that, Neil. Yep, I could agree with that. So what I'm going to ask of you in the chat is, if you can think of other distilleries that we don't talk about, and there's a lot of them. Sorry, Andy's saying, looking forward to making the most of what's left of the Malts Festival after driving my bus for most of the week. Good grief, Andy. I do not envy you that, because I imagine it's quite busy over there. But major producers that you could think that and I think what happens, what I'm sort of gearing toward here. Oh, Graham Young's in. Graham, good to see you, buddy. Sorry, just dropping that in. Hope you're well. It's weird. I've found, once again, I'm sure most of you know me by now, and most of you know that I work in an Irish whiskey shop selling Irish whiskey. Different person, different hat, but it's still me. But I try to separate the two people. But it's the best sounding board working in there, because when you get talking to people about whiskey, you discover the layers of people, as in where they're at in their journey, what people understand. An awful lot of people are buying for gifts. An awful lot of people are buying, and I'm not saying that these are people that don't know anything about whiskey. That's not, but there are certainly different tiers of people throughout their whiskey journey. And I just find it weird. You can almost, a person stands out almost whenever they start raving about Macallan and Dalmore and Bowmore and Jura and Glenlivet and this one and that one. And they stand out in a way that you go, it certainly makes me sort of cock an eyebrow and go, look, you know, you're barking up the wrong tree with me, put it like that. Here's where I'm going with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give my voice a rest, because my voice hasn't been great recently. That's what Phil said earlier on about being a bit croaky. And if anybody missed the short that I'm talking about that led into this, I'm going to play it, and then we'll discuss further. But what I want you to do in the chat is, if you can think of other big names, and whenever we actually get into talking about the whiskies, I want your alternatives as well. There. Always keep you as busy. I'll be back in a moment. 5 Scotch whisky producers the whisky community rarely talk about. Now, this is a bold statement, and I'm sure I will come in for some hate for this list, but the online whisky community that I generally listen to don't tend to talk about these producers anymore. So here's my list of 5 producers we rarely talk about. Coming in at number 5, we have Bowmore. On the Isle of Islay, this Suntory-owned distillery is known for the amount of caramel colouring that they tend to add to their whiskies. Nothing wrong with a lot of their whiskies, but the core range just seems to be a little bit expensive for the quality that you get. At number 4, we have a huge producer in Glenlivet. We rarely hear Glenlivet mentioned. Now, don't get me wrong, when you get into the Naduras and some of the more limited releases, then you're talking about good quality whiskey, but the sort of standard stuff tends to get frowned upon. It's not that expensive, it's just a little dull. At number 3, we have the White Mackay-owned Dalmore. Like Bowmore, we are looking at a whiskey that tends to add an awful lot of E150A food colouring, and they tend to put themselves into that premium whiskey group, which means that an awful lot of their core range stuff seems to be generally overpriced. And like all of these top 5, not bad whiskey by any means, but does the quality of the whiskey hold up to the value that they put upon it themselves? Well, in my opinion, not really. And the fact that most of the whiskey community generally don't talk about Dalmore would suggest that they agree. At number 2, we have another White Mackay-owned distillery. This one, the last time I checked, best-selling single malt in Scotland, we are looking at Jura. I'm sure an awful lot of people were expecting me to get to this name, because Jura, sadly, do not get talked about in very positive terms within the whiskey community. However, with that said, I know for a fact they have a huge fan base. It's what makes them best-selling single malt Scotch whisky in Scotland. And like I'm sure all on this list, they don't care whether the whiskey community are talking about them or not. However, as enthusiasts, we generally only ever hear them talking about in negative terms. And coming in at number 1, I'm sure there are at least a few of you out there know who I'm going to mention. Yes, it is Macallan. Like everybody that I've mentioned in this group, not bad whiskey, but I would suggest that most people within the whiskey community do not see the quality in Macallan whiskey that Edrington seemed to put upon it. So there you go. There are 5 very big whiskey producers that the whiskey community don't tend to talk about anymore. For whatever reason, I will leave up to you. I'm going to leave it at that before I dig an even bigger hole for myself and say sláinte mhath. So now there's already been a wee bit of chat there, and the thing that I know already, that there's a few that will sort of stand out. Bowmore is a weird one. We'll get into that in a little second. And Greg's Whiskey Guy did hit on something. We is too diverse, Jim. I agree that when I say we, the whiskey community, we is a big whiskey community. However, when I say we don't talk about these guys, they're not, I would argue that they're not making whiskey for us. That's sort of what I'm saying. The newer distilleries, most new distilleries in Scotland, and I would say there's not too many of us would argue this, seem to make whiskey for whiskey enthusiasts because they're enthusiastic about it. Is that saying that the bigger guys, the Bowmores, the Juras, etc., aren't enthusiastic about what they're making? Well, no, but they're not in our. Am I saying that we bypass? Let's talk our way through the whiskies. I'm going to BS my way through this one and see if I can dig my way out of a hole again. Teletubby whiskey, Jeff. Yes, it certainly is. I'd add Glenmorangie in there also, Jim. Do you know, Ben, I don't add Glenmorangie in there. Glenmorangie factors still quite highly in my distilleries, but there you go. I mean, for you, Ian was thinking of Glenfiddich. I would also even argue that Glenfiddich, I mean, when you get into the sort of 14s, 15s, they're not that bad, and I mean, you'll still see Glenfiddich 12. Glenfiddich 12 seems to be one of the ones that worldwide, globally, there's an awful lot of bars will have very little Scotch whisky behind that bar. And Glenfiddich 12 was always one that seemed to be, and if I'm speaking about this from an Irish bar point of view, as such, being in an Irish bar, for example, and if I had a choice of Blackbush, for example, Jameson, Paddy, maybe Power, something like that there, and Glenfiddich 12, I'll still take the Glenfiddich 12 because I think there's better quality in the Glenfiddich 12 than there is in any of them other blends, or, and the thing about it, the other thing that we sort of, I think, have to take into account with a lot of this, and this is what I have been taking into account with this list, is price and value for money and what you get. Dollar past Tim saying you could add Glenmorangie to that list. We'll get to that in a moment. Make a lot of budget supermarket bottles, but the 18 is 47.3% non-chill filter, natural colour, full maturation, first full bourbon, and wins over Deanston the 18 for me back side by side. We will get there in a moment, Tim. Bud Jenkins, I agree, or Whiskey Novice, I agree. I've never had a Jura or Dalmore that I really enjoyed, and certainly not worth the price. Graham Young, Dalwhinnie is one that is seldomly mentioned too. I agree with that also. I would also argue, and I have to Balvenie, honestly. I would personally have Balvenie on that list, in the ones that we don't really talk about an awful lot. Richard Ignew's, sorry I'm late. Good to see you, Richard. Glengoyne and Tullabarton, yep. Disregard my pathetic Kingsbarns, misread the theme, obviously. Paul, you're all right. Aberfeldy, Ben, yep, agreed. I would even go back, and I mean, it's producers like Aberlour, it's producers like, I mean, these were guys that when we were working through our, and this is what I meant whenever I said about stages of our whiskey journey, but it's weird. I mean, the big producers. So let's get into it. Bowmore. Now, this Bowmore 12, I'm going to have to put a fan on here in the hope that it doesn't, because I'm feeling it warm in here, ladies and gentlemen. You can see me steaming up a bit. This room always does get, it's all right at the start, and then it gets too warm. If the fan starts to annoy the sound, please let me know. This ball's been on the go in my cabinet for many, many moons. I'm not going to be drinking too much of my bottles that the producers that we don't talk about. I'm not going to be pouring these for myself today. I did do when I started talking about this, because I was dragging the bottles out again, or when I started talking about it, when I was basically going down the path of the subject, I thought, I better be careful here, because it's a while since I've drank an awful lot of these. And I got the open, or the Bowmore. Everybody's talking about open in the chat. I was just reading it. I got the Bowmore out and poured one, and it was every bit as thin and flaccid and boring and dull as I remember it being, even when I was on my way up in my journey. And I say on my way up in my journey cautiously, because I'm far from finished my journey, I would like to think, as most of us are. So, but I look at a lot of this as being the hoisting up bottle. Whiskies like this are the sort of hoisting up whiskies, single malts, that when you're learning, and it's why I'm always very cautious when people, even whenever people say, oh, you call yourself a novice, and I get it all the time, and it annoys me a little. I'm quite happy to remain a novice. It it bolsters me when I make mistakes, and I'm always learning things. So I'm quite happy to wear the badge of novice, let me tell you. And I'm always on the journey of learning. To say that I bypassed Bamore is wrong, because there's an awful lot of people in the chat saying it, and I knew it was going to come. The independently bottled Bamore is fantastic. There's no argument there. As a matter of fact, I could say the same for all 5 of these. I could say the same pretty much, I would imagine, for everything that'll be mentioned in the chat. Every big producer that we don't talk about, when independently bottled, it's fantastic. Auchentoshan raised its head. I noticed it out of the corner of my eye. I've never had an official bottling of Auchentoshan that I've liked. I cannot have it. I just think it's brutal. But Blackfin, Auchentoshan, we don't talk about them. But I found out in February at the Independence Festival that when independently bottled, it can be fantastic. Whiskey with Molly, Ben saying open, but the arguments are coming back against that. And I would agree that once again, that Open 14 is still it's a journey malt. It's one of those ones on our journeys once again, but it's one of the ones that, unlike the forgettable Open 14, basically a relatively basic Diageo malt from the classic malts series, is still, in my opinion, a decent malt. It's not one that it's one that I actually have sort of that much in a bottle in my cabinet. I'll never replace it, I don't think. But I could say the same about an awful lot of whiskies that I have in my cabinets. But I still think it's not that bad. Donner Past Tim saying, I love Glenfiddich 12 as a palate setter. Agree. Jeff Whiskey, I feel personally attached as I have a Jura 12 in the glass at the minute. Or personally attacked. I forgot, Jeff, that sometimes you're a bit needy, God help you. only joking, only jesting. Whiskey novice, you have to add Johnny Walker. Bud, once again, the Johnny Walker Green, the 15-year-old, I think is actually a fantastic blend at malt. So Johnny Walker, yes, we don't talk about. Yes, we tend to talk about in negative terms. And at this point, I'm being very personal in that I think that Johnny Walker Green is actually, there's a lot of quality going in that blend at malt. But yes, also, what frustrates the crap out of me then is, yes, I work in an Irish whiskey shop. We day and daily get people coming in asking for Scotch whiskey because they don't know. Google doesn't tell them that it's only Irish whiskey. And it's always Johnny Walker Blue. Oh, it must be Johnny Walker Blue. And that is an awful lot of what will raise its head later in this, whenever we get into the Dalmores and the Callans and stuff like that, where there's no justification for the price. And Johnny Walker Blue is a good example of it. Balvenie in the mix for me, Andy Hells. Yeah, Balvenie's weird. I've never liked the Balvenie once again. I would suggest that probably the 5 that I've named, I would think that if I was to reach out to you before having put that short out, to reach out to the whiskey community and say, name 5 big producers, if there was a poll, I would think that the 5 that were in my list there would probably have risen probably into the top 15 anyway, along with an awful lot of the rest of these that we're saying. Dalwhinnie. Balvenie just, I just struggle with my. This is me getting personal again here. When I reviewed the 14, I don't like Caribbean rum finished whiskey. I'm not a big rum fan. I don't like that molasses sweetness. So the 14 was sort of almost off the cards for me from day one. I didn't think I would like it. I didn't like it. Done. The 12-year-old Doublewood didn't excite me at all. One dimensional. When I went into the cask strength version of that, I thought, here we go. This has got to do it. Nah, same thing. Just boring. I found it. So it was almost with me and Balvenie, it's almost a 3 strikes and you're out situation where I just went, I can't find any joy in any of this whiskey, so I'm not going to keep wasting my money on it. Roy O'Mara, Glenkinchie, and rarely seen as an indie, is very, very true. Donner Pass, Indie Bowmore is breathtaking stuff. Yeah, totally. Henrik, Highland Park, I know. Although I've the cask strength Highland Park, I think is breathtaking. So it's once again that's a personal thing. Jeff, Sugar Kitty, there are a few decent Balvenies out there. Don't doubt it, but it's mixed with such mediocre product. It's not worth going through it all. I know that's as I say where my problem has been. That is what's happened. Bruzel is a new name to me. The more time I spend around whiskey professionals, the more I realize everyone is a novice in the right context. Agreed. Thank you. Richard New, Brazil, amen, brother. Yep, agreed. Let's see, because I want to get something into my glass. So I'm scrolling down. So the reason, Graham Young, very kind of you. Jim, this is for the dram. I didn't get to share with you at Leith, buddy. Cheers and thanks for tonight. Graham, I can't apologise enough. I seen you in the background. I was speaking to somebody and I was... we've all been in that situation. I know we have. We were going, yeah, I just did that. I was going to... Yeah. Oh, he's gone. And that's exactly what was happening. But Leith was so busy, and I have no doubt, Graham, our paths will cross very soon again. So, I want to get something in the glass. So, Ben, thank you. Thanks for the friend and hand tour, Jim. Highly recommend that if anyone of the barflies are in Belfast, a real treasure trove. You are very welcome, Ben. Ben, it was great to have you. Actually, it was actually genuinely good to have you in, because you were sort of one of the only patrons or one of the only Highlands that hadn't been in the friend of hand. So and I appreciate that, Ben. And this goes to all of you out there. Anybody, if you're ever in Belfast, please call in and see us. I look after you and make sure we get a good look round. I want to get something in the glass there. So what I'm trying to do is, here's 5 whiskey producers, big producers that aren't hitting it. Dave and BV, just because. Dave, thank you. Listen, I'm going to get something into my glass now and raise it to all of you guys. It's very, very much appreciated. This, I had to write these down earlier on because I wasn't really... granted, I actually said in that short, and I made a mistake, that the more at the price it comes in at, it doesn't necessarily, the quality doesn't match up. This 12-year-old is about 35 to 40, and I'm always going to have to speak in pounds because it's only, it's the denomination that I have to put on it. 35 to 45 pounds. That ain't expensive for a 12-year-old malt. It isn't really. Let's face it. In the times that we live in, so it's not that expensive. Certainly for the 12-year-old. Even the 18 isn't that overpriced whenever you look at some of the others. But for that same 35 to 45 pounds, for less, I tell you, I would take a non-age stated Ardmore Legacy over this any day of the week. That's a very personal thing. But the one that I'm actually going to put out there, and this is actually an open one that I haven't, one I haven't opened. It's one that I've had many times in the past, but I'm just opening a fresh bottle. And the reason being, I'm probably going to do some re-reviews soon. Well, as a matter of fact, I am going to do some re-reviews soon. This you will pick up. Lechic 10-year-old. Now, granted, I can only ever offer up our market. You will pick it up in our market. But Lechic 10-year-old for the same price or less than Bowmore 12. That's that. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the term no-brainer. That's a no-brainer. That is an absolute no-brainer, in my opinion. I've been a huge fan of Lechic since the first 10-year-old I ever had. 10-year-old Lechic I ever had. And it never, in my opinion, fails. I described it as the peat sleeper at the time because it was, to me, it was the first whiskey that I thought that whenever I heard the term peat blindness, probably coming from the lips of our very own Roy Duff at a later date, and I went, I know what peat blindness is because I had it with Lechic 10-year-old, and I couldn't believe that the same whiskey was so heavily peated, depending on the occasion, depending on how I was sort of tasting it on that occasion. So this is a fresh pour out of a fresh bottle, so as a neck pour. But all I'm saying is, given the option, Bowmore 12-year-old, Lechic 10-year-old, same price, 46.3% non-chill filtered natural color, as opposed to brown. I'll take this. Thanks. Any day of the week. And this I'm going to raise to all of those donations there, all of those to the my voice hasn't been very good of late. All of those people adding to the bottle funds, I will be buying a dram or two at the weekend. Appreciate it, my friends. Tommy the Green Ranger, I hear less and less of Glenfarclas, even though they have recently brought forward a few 46%. Glenfarclas are another one. Even some of the bigger names, the Glenallachys, not Glenallachys, that wasn't who I meant. Big sherry bombs, the Highland. Somebody tell me. Usually, I know you'll tell me. This is fantastic. All I will say about Ben's saying about Glenfarclas is boring. It is a bit. Glendronach, of course. Thank you, my friends. You know, we don't mention Glendronach as much as we did. And I don't think that was down to we have started to chill filter, or it's certainly on the radar, but it was Glendronach. I mean, don't tend to get mentioned as much, I've noticed. If you get to Glenfarclas, the tour is actually quite good. I know I said it. Whiskey novice, I'm Brazilian. Please translate all videos in Portuguese, please. I might. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. I mean, it's bad enough most of my videos aren't in English. It's a matter of fact, I happened to read something the other day about me being Scottish, which I'm not. I still think it takes, Lechic 10 is actually one that I'm going to suggest. It takes a while, not even just to open up in the glass. It actually takes the bottle a while. It all has always, I've found, been one of those ones that once over the shoulder starts to play the game, starts to open up a bit. But given the option, Bowmore 12-year-old or this, and this is just one example. And I said it a moment ago, I would take Ardmore Legacy over Bowmore 12. I had an event here a couple of years ago for the Highlands, my Bottle Kill Bonanza, and we were standoffish with there's a term, with the Ardmore Legacy. There was a drop of Ardmore Legacy in a bottle that I had here, and I remember myself and Tony and probably Neil and Ben sitting around my table in the kitchen, and this Ardmore, and we're going, nah, just leave it. We'll not bother with the Ardmore. I know it's out there, but we'll not bother with it. And eventually, whenever we just went, pour the Ardmore Legacy and get it done, and we all sort of went, it's not that bad. Ardmore Legacy, given the price that it comes in at, there's not enough Ardmore in the market as far as I'm concerned. Should be an awful lot more of it. Lechic 10, any day of the week. So the second distillery that I named, second big producer, huge producer, Glenlivet. Now, there's a reason that the only Glenlivet I have in my cabinets, because I will not buy the stuff because I just find it so pedestrian. It's just such, and they are another good example of a distillery that people, once again, and this, I'm laughing, and I shouldn't laugh, but when people come into the shop and they go, I've tried Glenlivet, it's a good whiskey, you should try Glenlivet. And I generally have to walk away and leave them to my colleague in the shop because I'm away laughing heartily to myself. Donner Pass, I mourn the rebranding abomination Inverhouse has inflicted on the wonderful Balblair. Balblair, there's a name from the past as well. Old Pulteney, Anock, and Speyburn. Beautiful whiskies that have been cut down to base crap. So sad. Yeah, I mean, Balblair, when you think of the vintage stuff, I mean, breathtaking. Now, don't get me wrong, the 12 sort of, I had a bit of a love-hate thing with Balblair, but it's, the last time I checked, it was back to love again a bit. Hellswed, thanks for keeping the bar open. Lots of hugs waiting to be shared on Saturday. Helen, I appreciate it. Thank you very, very much to you and Andy and Frank in your household tonight. Anyway, Glenlivet, the only one that I actually have in my cabinet, and I bought this as a reviewing stock. It was part of the Baker's Dozen, I think, 12-year-olds, and this one not bad actually. Bottled at 46%. The illicit stills was better. The one that came before this. This was the licensed dram. The one that came before this was better, but mundane, in my opinion, doesn't describe their, and I'm going to say core range pretty much. Anything, and I mean the supermarket stuff is just dull. It's as dull as dishwater. I mean, I remember even going back. They were the first big producer that I remember trying, and I think it was like the Founders Reserve or something like that, and going, I expected more of Glenlivet. I mean, surely a big distillery, a big company like this, a big producer, should have quality whiskey, and it was far from it. Far from it. As a matter of fact, as my shorts, it's a good breakfast whiskey. Basically, as a matter of fact, it's probably not even a good breakfast whiskey. I was in attendance, Graham Young. I was in attendance at a single cast lineup with Alan Winchester from Glenlivet in the day 2018 or so. Some of the most amazing bourbon cast gems I've tasted. Wish the available ones were better. There you go. And I don't doubt for one second that there is some quality stuff, but it never either doesn't make the market, or there's something going on. Greg saying, I love Glenlivet also for sentimental reasons, but I mentioned in some ways in my videos, as for Aberlour, there are quite several expressions I will just not replace at all. It means more room for others. I agreed. Actually, Aberlour were one of the ones that I remember falling in love with the 10-year-old Aberlour early on in my whiskey journey. And I still have a bottle of that original, a full bottle, because I remember whenever it was being replaced by the 12-year-old, trying the 12-year-old and going, this ain't as good as the 10-year-old. To me, the 10-year-old version of it was better, but I could still say the same for Glenmorangie. I could say the same for, I said it the other day, there's somebody else has pulled the 12, Aberlour did it. Somebody else did it, and I can't remember who it was off the top of my head. And generally, that younger version was actually slightly better. And I still have that full bottle of Aberlour at the back of my cabinet. And someday I will open that and enjoy it. again, just to go back, and I have no doubt in my mind it'll take me back to them. Beautiful area, beautiful place. I mean, it doesn't change the fact that, and you know, the Abuna's good whiskey. I do think where Aberlour is concerned, the Abuna's, you know, but once again, the price got out of hand with them. Illicit Still, Roy, Illicit Still was quite good. Love to have another bottle. Yeah, it was a shame they disappeared. Bud saying, I think there is a correlation between the ubiquitous brands at every bar and things we don't talk about. Agreed. 100% agreed. It's the stuff that, it's crowd pleasing, I suppose, is the best way to put it, isn't it? If we want smooth whiskey, Glenlivet. It's inoffensive. It's approachable. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't burn on the way down. At which point I step up again. The hackles are up in my neck. I'm turning red. There's veins popping out all over the place, and I'm saying it's ethanol. It's not its fault if it burns on the way down. Have you tried drinking wine? That's what I say. I don't get on very well with selling whiskey. Glenn Levay, Tom Freeney saying, seriously, get the F. Anyhow, that stuff is super vanilla. All the best to you and yours, Tom. Very much appreciate it, my friend. Sláinte. So what am I going to suggest? Well, this, your Glenlivet 12, once again, your standard Glenlivet 12, not this one, which is, and I said it in the video, the Naduras, the Glenlivet Naduras. If you've never had a Glenlivet Nadura, whatever, and a lot of them I think are gone now, were good. We're good whiskies. The illicit stills and this one, the licensed dram, good, decent whiskies. This one not as good, as I said, as the illicit dram. But and I said, I mean, Ben and I we were talking about Glenmorangie. I'll take Glenmorangie over this if we're looking for something that's a bit more gentle. Now, obviously, Glenmorangie, this Speyside Glenmorangie Highland, the one that I'm actually going to put out, and I'm probably not. Well, I might pour a wee dram of something again. Just why not? I bought this in auction fairly recently, just for S&Gs. And we were talking earlier on about Glenmorangie. This is an older version of the Chardonnay cask Glenmorangie. Do you know what? I will. And I have a very soft spot in my heart for Glenmorangie already. Simply for the fact that sometimes I'm a bit of a miserable sod. And I look at Glenmorangie, I look at Loch Lomond, or another good example of it, and I say the quality for the price that you get with Glenmorangie and Loch Lomond are two good examples of that's not the original cork, by the way. That cork well broke as soon as it was opened. So this is just a little drop with the Glenmorangie, which is still, I mean, I know the Chardonnay cask is still available. It was only whenever I seen this one in auction, I thought I'd pick it up because it was dirt cheap even then. I don't know, once again, most of the stuff balled at 40%. I know you have to be into the sort of, I think it was Tim, Donner Pass Tim said it earlier on about the 18-year-old, which was, you know, I'm sure I've had the Glenmorangie 18-year-old, but I can't remember what it was like. Graham Young saying those early Naduras with the 16-year age were indeed excellent. The last few were non-age state and just too young, really. Well, they were, pardon me, they were a bit young, but still, you know, Glenlivet at cask strength, natural Nadura. You know, it was I thought it was decent stuff. Donner Pass, the Glenmorangie warehouses, special releases can be some very good things. To me, without having to be, I think that's the thing I love about Glenmorangie, without them trying to be special, the price that they come in at, and as soon as I poured this, whenever I got it, and I know wine casks aren't for everybody. I know it's not everybody's choice, but Chardonnay casks don't get used an awful lot in finishing. Once again, Loch Lomond doing it, Glenmorangie doing it. There was something I reviewed recently, I believe, or something. I remember talking about Chardonnay casks with something, and I think I maybe offered this up. I love this. I absolutely think this is just as a gentle, sweet herb. It's sweeter in the wine end of things. It's just I just think it's lovely. Alessandro's asking which Loch Lomond is best for you. That's a tough question, my friend, because I have one cabinet which is dedicated to Loch Lomond. I love the stuff. Once again, when you get into the Chardonnay yeast stuff, so you would be sort of hand picking special bottlings. The one they did for the Open in 2019, something like that, which was the Chardonnay. It was pretty much the first time the Chardonnay yeast fermentation stuff sort of showed up for them. Stunning. But they've done special releases since with that Chardonnay yeast. Stunning. But I mean, even the 12, the Inchmore and the Inchmoan, if you see the independently bottled Inch Fads, I just love what Loch Lomond do. I love everything that Loch Lomond do. It's that simple. I didn't jump on the Warehouse Edition 11 here, the new distillery release edition. It's the first one I haven't bought, and now they're gone. And everybody's coming on and saying how fantastic they are for 4-year-old whiskey. If we were depressed about every bottle we missed, we would just spend our life in the doldrums. So I was going to stop buying those distillery reserves eventually. As a matter of fact, the distillery reserve number 10 is just sitting down here because I've got to that stage in the office where bottles are everywhere. But Richard and you saying Michael Henry moment. Every moment where Loch Lomond get mentioned is a Michael Henry moment. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we love Loch Lomond, is just because Michael's so open and I mean, his inventiveness. So 40% on the palate, acts like 40%. It's light, it's effervescent. It's, but given a choice between this and Glenlivet 12-year-old, I'll still take this. And this is, once again, me being, it's a personal opinion. I would also say, once again, Glenfiddich 12-year-old behind the bar, Glenlivet 12-year-old behind the bar. I'll take the Glenfiddich any day of the week, because the Glenfiddich's got a bit more body. It's got something going on. Glenlivet is the only way I can describe all of that sort of core Glenlivet stuff is pedestrian. It's just dull. It's flaccid. It just doesn't get anywhere. But this Glenmorangie, it's grassy. There's stuff going on. That's all we ask. How it sort of got me questioning myself. Now, I know Glenlivet were one of the big guys back in the early 1980s when the Macallans were coming about with single malts, when Glenfiddich had already been there and done it. And Glenlivet were coming up through, with single malt in the market, and people were going, have you tried this incredible new thing, that's not blended? And fine. But for modern whiskey enthusiasts, dull. It's dull. And I mean, I've found myself in chats an awful lot where Irish whiskey is concerned around a certain distillery on the north coast whose name rhymes with, well, actually, I think whenever I was talking about it, I think whenever I was doing my correct pronunciation of Irish distilleries, taking the hand out of what Roy had done, and I said it was called Bushmills because of Kate. It was named after the great singer Kate Bush, born in 1608, and of course something about the director Mills. Anyway, Bushmills, and once again, I was saying the same thing about them, and I will continue to say it. If you continue to release pedestrian whiskey, nobody will talk about you. If you put something on the market that gets the wheels turning, gets the gears moving, gets the whiskey community talking. And it doesn't need to be an ancient whiskey. It doesn't need to be a something super duper whiskey. Non-age stated, good cask maturation, a good price, bottled at a good ABV naturally, and we'll start talking about it. And all of a sudden, people will start mentioning your distillery again, your process, and we'll So it just, there's an awful lot of pedestrian stuff out there. Danny Keenan. Good evening, folks. Late to the party after a busy day. Danny, welcome in. Neil Lavery said he split it. Don't know. I'll not hear of it. I'll not hear of it, my friend. That little Glenmorangie went down a little quicker than I'd expected, but it is tasty. It's very fresh and tasty. A new glass, I think. A fresh glass. And we will move on to probably the one that ires me most out of those five. And I know, once again, like every one of the five that I mentioned in these big producers that we, the whiskey community, don't talk about. And when I say we, it's certainly the one that I feel most we don't talk about. Or, these are the five, that we don't talk about. And it's Dalmore. I know that they have their fan bases. This, honestly, genuinely, out of the five that I mentioned, is easily the one that winds me up the most. There's no reason for it to be that color. Certainly not that dark, given the maturation and the finishing, etc., that it's had. The bottle, okay, yeah. If you want to pay that amount of money, so when I say that amount of money, and we're talking in pounds again, obviously. So I did a little check earlier on. You're talking a swing at its cheapest, £55, but usually closer to £75 when I was looking earlier on. And Whiskey with Molly. Hello, how are you? Yes, it's the great Mr. Patterson himself. I have a lot of time for Richard Patterson. I think the man's fantastic. I can listen to him. I genuinely can. But this just, it's this, if there's one of the whiskies that is, and once again, the Bowmore, inexpensive. The Glenlivet, inexpensive for two 12-year-old malts. So at that point, you could sort of go, okay. At that point, you could sort of say, well, yeah, they're a bit mundane, but they're not. I mean, look at how much whiskey. Look, you're getting a 12-year-old malt for that price. So you could sort of, all right, then we'll let them away with it. The price that these guys ask for this crap, no. And this is, I did once again, every one of those five whiskies, apart from a sort of core range Glenlivet, because I just won't buy it. I poured one, tried it again, and this is in particular was the one that I just went, that is not good whiskey. That is boring as F. And it just, the price that they asked for it is too much. And it's the one that, in a lot of cases, once again, when people come into the shop, and Dalmore have a huge fan base. When you look at the likes of the Cigar Malt and the King, what was the one? The King, I can't remember the name of it. It was one of the first samples that I got. Not King James II. What was it? Somebody will tell me. Somebody will tell me in the chat. King Alexander. That was the one. Thank you, Richard. Everybody rushes. Whiskey with Stuart, very early on in my, Stuart was, and I've told this story before, Stuart was one of the first people in the whiskey community to reach out to me whenever I sort of went onto the socials as the whiskey novice at first. And Stuart had bought a bottle of the King Alexander III. And he, fair play to him, you know, you're talking a bottle, even then, this is going back however many years ago, even then you were still talking close on £200 a bottle. And he had bought this, and I remember, and I hope I'm not speaking out of school here whenever I say this, that Stuart reviewed it. It was his first review on YouTube, and he gave it a great review. And then it was quite early on in my whiskey journey, and he had sent me a sample of this, and I just thought, this is dreadful. I thought I liked whiskey. Am I broken? Because, pardon me, I watched his review and thought, and this stuff was incredible. It was, wow, it was the best whiskey ever. And I was just going, one of us is wrong here. I don't get this. And when I reached out to him about it, at a later date, he went, yeah, no, I didn't like it either. But he says, the amount of money I paid for it, and I thought everybody wanted me to say good things about it, so I said good things about it. And he took that video down. He actually he took that down off his channel because he sort of seen sense. Fair play to Stuart. But I would never, ever after that moment go back to looking at the likes of that whiskey and go, right, let's give it another go. I just found it so bad. Now I know, once again, it was early on in my journey. Maybe now I would think more of it, but certainly it didn't wow me then. King Alexander III, that's the one, Jeff. And you certainly can't polish one of them. Dalmore, the kitty price of single malt, overinflated and full of fake tan. Well put, Phil. The only Dalmore I have is an exclusive bottled for a celebration at La Gavroche for Michel Roux Jr. Picked up at auction for £90 about 5 years ago. That's the thing. If you pick one up at auction cheap, fair enough. Give it a go, see what it's like. But honestly, it's the likes of this. Jimmy Lake, Jimmy, good to see you in, my friend. I wasn't sure whether you were still about. Haven't seen you in ages. LOL, I thought I liked whiskey. Anyway, this, as I say, I would not, no way would I replace this. Certainly at the price that they asked for it. I think it's ridiculous. Especially considering the quality whiskey that you can pick up for that price. If you take price into account, then Dalmore, a great example of what else you can get. And I mean, I've picked one. I wrote a few down earlier on whenever I was doing stuff just before I come on. And even just throwing out the same price. Now, granted, it's not sherry cask matured, but for the same price and less, you'll pick up an Arden American 10-year-old. That whiskey's phenomenal, in my opinion. Certainly the 2025 edition. You'll pick up an Edredor 12-year-old. Phenomenal. And it is, I mean, it's been around, Caledonia has been around for a long time. And it's, let's face it, it's still, I mean, and when you were talking about colour, I have one over my shoulder there. When we're talking about colour and natural colour, well, while we're on the subject, the bottle that I actually pulled out then, because I pretty much thought, well, we're talking about the Edredor 2, Edredor number 2, the Signatory Vintage Edredor number 2. I'm sure I had other ones written down. I think I actually just wrote, I have a little post-it here that was writing stuff on, and I said, any heavily sherried Signatory Vintage. And you would buy them with change. As a matter of fact, you could pretty much nearly buy two of them, bottled at 57.1% natural colour, non-chill filtered for the price of that Dalmore 12. And in most cases, you're talking 8, 9, 10-year-old whiskey, so they still come with that age statement. But give me this stuff any day of the week. I mean, this is, this is whenever I start to, this is when I start to get frustrated with, and I can't help myself, and I don't hide it. I genuinely do not hide it. When I in the shop, with the can't remember which glass was clean now. Here we go. This is the one. Um, that's whenever I start to get annoyed when the Dalmores come out. That's what we're going to call them. When the Dalmores come out, and Dalmore is the best whiskey in the world. It's the best thing I've ever tasted, and it's oh, I paid this for it, and all of a sudden that mentality creeps in. That mentality that because I paid so much for it, that mentality that Stuart had when he reviewed the King Alexander III. I paid almost £200 for this. This is fantastic, and I'm going to tell everybody it's fantastic. And then when, let's face it, most of us I know Stuart, and he's a good lad. He is a bloody good lad. When common sense kicks in, and you say to yourself, sod it, the money's been spent. Let's face it, it's not that good. And I would go one further and say it was awful. Yeah, I mean, there's no comparison, and especially the fact that, I mean, the colour probably ain't far off. No, I mean that's pretty similar. I could do the whole white paper behind it and all that jazz, but I'm not going to. You know, one of them's natural, one of them ain't, and people don't like to be. And I mean, once again, this is me sort of. I'm certainly not talking down to any of you. I doff my cap to everybody in this chat because I look up to every one of you. It's as I say, it's the Dalmores that I want. I and I wouldn't do it. I because you can't win over that attitude. I know, I've learned you cannot win over that attitude of this is the best thing in the world. I love this whiskey. And you go, have you tried this? Even get the big drippy eyes and everything, and just go, but you should really give this a go. Oh, no. That costs half the price of my Dalmore. So that's half as good. That I shit you not. And I apologize for my language. I do apologize for my language. That is the attitude. And it gets under my skin if you can't tell. I do apologise for that, for the language. Roy would disapprove. Sorry, Roy. Bringing the whole side down. This isn't fantastic, in my opinion. It's certainly not the best thing out of Edredor, by any means, in my opinion. But given the choice between that and Dalmore 12-year-old, well, there's no competition. What we'll actually do to that wee drop is add a little drop of water. Little drop of water into it, just tiny little drop, because it just needs I think it needs it actually just to, that's probably a little drop too much. Jimmy Legg, I've seen him saying something there. The public has its problems. The public do. And I have to remember that, like most of us, we're hobbyists. And I've said it before, and it's maybe not right to say it. I'm a big fat loudmouth. Jimmy claims that, but we'll argue over which one of us is the big fat loudmouth with the opinions. It's just, that's one of the reasons why I love the whiskey community, because we are just so excited about this thing, this water of life. And every one of us in this chat, every one of us in the greater community has, I argue, bought our right to say what we want about these whiskies. And when I say we've bought our right, we've paid for the whiskey. We spent our money on that whiskey. The way maybe I'm wrong, but I look at that as, I can say about it what I want then, because it's my money. They didn't give it to me and please me with it and say, please be nice about it. Dalmore, I mean, I'm sure they've probably done something. There's got to be some good stuff in their repertoire, but it's the price that you have to pay for this stuff. Just won't do it. Just will not do it. There'll be a note: go home to your parents, Dalmore. Must try better. Yeah, water. The palate changes, and it's the palate on this Edredor needs water. Nose is a good sherry cask nose anyway, but the palate needed water. Certainly wouldn't be one of my favorite signatories, but they had to get that. Well, they were celebrating obviously the new distillery with 200 years, but they needed to get that distillery out there somehow, I suppose. So, who's Henrik Schmidt? Your comparison Dalmore versus Edredor is how I feel about Bushmills versus Bowan. You see, well, once again, and I know why I actually said about Bushmills. Bushmills, and I have to be very, very careful what I say. Sometimes my job can depend on it. It's the quality of their spirit is unquestionable. Is the way I put it. They make an incredibly good spirit. It just sometimes I don't think they've done the right thing with it in a lot of cases. Bowan, Bowan, the inventiveness that Bowan are sort of bringing about, and still I've said it that Bowan Distillery, anybody, I mean the Scotch whisky lovers out there probably never even heard of Bowan. There's one of the newer distilleries in Ireland, but their PX finished, their Oloroso mature PX finished pot still is my current favorite Irish whiskey. It's just all summer fruit and it's just a really, really good drinking whiskey. I really have to be very careful what I say about Bushmills because, as I say, or about Bushmills and Irish whiskey in general, in a lot of cases, because of the other guy in the other hat. I don't want to. I don't mind falling out with Scotch whisky guys because they're much nicer. Rick Johnson, I seen in earlier on. I seen him in there. Good to see you, and Rick. Whiskey Novice. Good evening, Jim and fellow beautiful barflies. Just flew into Glasgow and heading over to the pot still right now for Scottish Welcome Dram. Rick, are you in Scotland again? Are you going to be in Glasgow? Are you going to be in Campbelltown? I'm going to be in. I was telling the guys I'll be in Campbelltown on Saturday, and then I'll be in Glasgow. Although I would dare say there's a good chance you're here for the fish. Probably more likely, so I'll probably not get a chance to catch up with you. Jimmy Legg, so Jim volunteered to fill in for Roy and get fired because of it. Roy would cry his whiskey for a year. Honestly, I do. I just there's things in the shop on a daily basis. I voice my angst about a lot of Irish whiskies and things like that, and how much I prefer Scotch whisky, which always gets a laugh. But I have my reasons. Yeah, Rick's heading died. I thought that was the case. Now, moving on. We're doing well for time here. I really don't want to run over a couple of hours tonight. I might have mentioned earlier on, but I can't remember. This will raise jubilations or commiserations or misery. I don't know, but there'll be no quiz at the end of this because I didn't have the time to get one together, and B, I know Menno will. If you ask, he will always go out of his way to do it, and I don't like annoying him all the time because I always feel, and he's always gracious with his time and all that there. So just no quiz tonight. So there. Drew from AZ is in a contribution from the swear jar buddy. Cheers, Drew. Good to see you, my friend. So, Jura. Woo! And if Jeff Whiskey's still in there, one of his favourites, Ben and I were talking about this recently, and about how, we Ben Whiskey with Molly, how he, I hope he doesn't mind me telling you, that Jura was his sort of entry into whiskey, and as far as he was concerned, that was whiskey. And then whenever he realised, no, it's not all garbage, there's actually good stuff out there. And once again, I said it in my video about the top 5, in my opinion, producers, large producers. I never used the word large, but who don't us, the whiskey community, as a greater whole, don't really talk about anymore. And Jura, I said it in the video, I would imagine people were waiting on me mentioning. But I also said, and as far as I know, I could be wrong, but as far as I know, still the best-selling single malt in Scotland. I mean, don't ask me why. It's not, but they obviously have a huge fan base. These ones, and you can step in here and tell me different if you think. But I remember Roy. Sorry, I was edgy. I remember Roy talking about a bottle, an independently bottled Jura. I have it, and I can't remember off the top of my head who it's from. And I should have actually dug it out. It's in another room, and I remember at the time, even Roy going, "No, as Jura goes, this is actually good stuff. This is I like this," and I bought a bottle of it based on that. I actually back to almost what we were saying a moment ago. I found myself going, yeah, no, I get it. Actually, yeah, this is, yeah, definitely, yep. Nat, when I got to hear, I was still going, Nat, still crap, and I was genuine about it. That I thought I was convincing myself that I like this. Now, it's obviously, as I say, once again, they have a huge fan base because they didn't make the sales that they made based on producing bad whiskey. Jeff saying Jura 10 is one of my least favourite drams of all time, nearly put me off Scotch, but the new Jura 12 has genuinely impressed me. Here's one of the issues, Jeff, and you could prove everybody wrong, that they've got such a name within the whiskey community now that an awful people, myself included, will not spend their money on them. This Jura 12 that you talk about could be fantastic, and probably is. It would be, for me, certainly would be a try before I buy kind of a thing. Glasgow this weekend, you never know. I will be certainly looking out for drams that I've never tried before. All right. So I was reading the question there in the background. So Jura, they've got into my head because I've never had one, even independently bottled, that I've enjoyed. And they've got into my head now. What was the one was it the Jura Journey? Jura Journey that a few people used to rave on about a bit, that the Jura Journey was that bit better. But once again, even by that point, if I seen it on auction or anything like that there, I'd already talked myself out of Jura, and I just did not enjoy it. I really must, and I can't for the life of me remember who that independent bottler was that bottled the Jura that Roy said he quite liked. And as I say, I bought a bottle based on that. Talked myself into thinking I liked it, and then realised whenever I went back to it at a later date that it was still not great. This, I mean, speaking of, I don't know, this Signatory vintage is just, it's gone down the hatch. I'm not convinced by that Edward too. It's not bad. Richard at News saying 80. I don't think it was James 80. No, it wasn't James 80 in that case. I know where the bottle is in my cabinet, but it's not in this room, so I'm not leaving you to go there. What I'm going to do is throw out a couple of alternatives. So the Jura, that 10-year-old, once again, you're talking 30 to 40 pounds. 10-year-old age statement. Yes, it's some weird color of orange, but that doesn't really matter. It's more the fact that, it's 30 to 40 pounds. But here's what I'm going to suggest, that for the same price, you'll get many's a Loch Lomond once again. I pulled out a couple of bottles just for the crack more than anything else. McLean's knows you will pick up in that price. Well, if you've never had this stuff, you're missing out, because it's a cracking blend. And I mean, it's once again, it's, in my opinion, this is another one that I tend to fall out with people about in the shop. But it must be single malt. I must have single malt. There's some great blends. If you must have single malt, you're missing out on some incredible blends. But the one I'm actually going to pour for myself, just because, well, once again, it's the Campbelltown Festival week. What am I having next? Well, I'll keep that glass for what I'm having next and use a clean glass for a little drop of what I have left of Campbelltown Loch. I must get myself another bottle of this. And it's something that relatively easy got when we're talking about Campbelltown whiskies. But here's what I'm going to say. Given the choice, Jura 10-year-old in the same price bracket, Campbelltown Loch. I'm going to take Campbelltown Loch without any argument. Without an argument. Because it's the quality's there. Okay, Glen Scotia might just be looking at it, but you're talking. I always laugh at that one. I always find that one quite funny. That whenever they talk, and I'm just going to bring it up, because I just find it funny that it's a blend of the three 100% Campbelltown whiskies. It's a blend of the three whiskies from Campbelltown, and it comes in a Springbank bottle. I just think it's laughable, honestly. But I think it's laughable in the sort of fair play to you. You pulled the wool over our eyes there. No. LL Steam, the Loch Lomond Steam and Fire, Blackfen saying this is in the price range and a fair bit better than the Jura 10, I reckon. Yeah. As I say, nearly any Loch Lomond around that price. Any Loch Lomond around that price is better than Jura of the same price, in my opinion. Remembering, only my opinion. Bob Weiser, Whiskey Novice, was the Jura not a Douglas Lang PX cask? It was a Douglas Lang. It was a Douglas Lang. I bought it and never thought much of it either. It was. That's exactly who it was, Bob. Appreciate it, sir. Thank you. Oh, Campbelltown. I can't wait to Saturday. Not trying to rub it into anybody there, but just that Campbelltown funk. That every time I say it, 3-in-1 oil, that sweeter industrial thing is what Campbelltown is to me. And every good one does it. I only recently got my hands on the Kilkerran 8-year-old bourbon cask. A review coming in pending a couple of weeks' time. Oh, mind-blowing in my opinion. Mind-blowing. I mean, I know it was one from last year. It was last year's edition. But I would actually argue that it's probably, we're 5 months into this year. It's currently my whiskey of the year that I've had in this year. Tom Freeney saying the batch variation in Campbelltown Loch is something to celebrate. I 100% agree. And the same can be said of Springbank 10-year-old. Not, I would argue, not the same can be said for the 12 and the 15, because, well, we still celebrate it, but it means that in a lot of cases, in my opinion, they're a bit up, they're a bit down. Always all right. I sort of say that because where Springbank's concerned, I could only ever compare eggs for eggs. Where every other Scotch whisky is concerned, I'm sort of putting it out there in Scotland. But where Springbank's concerned, and generally Campbelltown, certainly Springbank, Glengyle, I tend to think eggs for eggs. So I'm comparing it to other Springbanks, other Glengyle, other Kilkerrans. So anyway, Danny Keenan, thank you, my friend. Thank you for stepping in and looking after us tonight, Jim. Have a dram in the wee tune on me. Very much appreciate it, Danny. Thank you. This one's for you and for all of the others, and for everybody in here tonight. You know that against your 10-year-old, and it's only the 10-year-old, but I'm and I know at some point somebody will pour me a Jura blind, and I'll be in some blind challenge at some point, and I'll say, oh, this is fantastic, not knowing what it is, because that's what happens, isn't it? But until that day, I'm not saying I hate Jura. I would never say I hate any whiskey. Honestly, I never would. I would never, ever go as far as saying as I hate whiskey, any whiskey, because where's the joy in that? Ian Williamson, heading off now, Jim. I hope you have a fantastic time in Campbelltown, and hope everyone heading to Islay has a brilliant time too. Cheers. Cheers to you, Ian, and hell, indeed. Easy, that stuff, I don't know, whenever you put anything sort of Campbelltown, we all get a bit dewy-eyed, and it's the best thing in the world ever. We can't help ourselves, but at the same time, the likes of that, and it's whenever you're putting it out there, I'm putting it out there and saying, well, take this or take a Jura. Yeah, no argument for me. So the last of those five, and it was always going to be for me, probably, it was simple. And I mean, it's sort of sometimes just becomes a bit of a running joke. I feel that we have to get the feet into Macallan and say, yeah, we wouldn't bother with you. It's a price thing once again, and this is probably the one, along with Dalmore, that needles me most when people come into the shop and start, and I'm going to just use the term mouthing off, because that's pretty much what they're doing. Oh, I only drink Macallan, or I only drink Middleton. Even it's I put them in the same place. I will only drink Middleton very rare. And I'm going, well, what a bloody waste of money that is, because I could name you 300 other whiskies in here that are better. And Macallan, Pappy Van Winkle in the US is the other one that, and I speak to an awful lot of bourbon drinkers through the shop, and most of them say the same. And these are whiskey enthusiasts. These are genuine whiskey enthusiasts. I would not waste my money on Pappy. And they're going, because it'd give me anything else from the Buffalo Trace Distillery. And I'm just inwardly smiling, going, yeah, you and I can be friends. Macallan are the same in Scotland. Middleton are the same in Ireland. Hakushu, probably it is in Japan. And then pretty much every country has a stupidly overpriced whiskey that never matches up to the quality of and I actually said it in the video, but I made a bit of a faux pas on what I meant to say. I don't think Edrington price it to the quality of the whiskey. That's what I meant to say. And the reason I say that, so once again, I don't know, I think this is actually natural color. So fine, okay, we'll give them that. but it's bottled at 40%. It is chill filtered. And I mean, once again, the swing in this, you're talking 80 to £100 for this 12-year-old. Where's the justification in that? Now, don't get me wrong. Probably out of the 5 that I picked as a tasting whiskey, as the whiskey tastes, I would actually argue that this is probably the best out of the 5 whiskies that I talked about tonight. Pardon me. It's really chocolatey. It's really, but when I reviewed the whiskey, I remember people coming back and going, and I knew I was going to come in for a bit of hate. I don't care. I've said it before. But, the Macallan crew of the world, the keyboard warriors gathered together and said, look, the reason it's expensive is because it's the best. It's like Rolex. It's like Ferrari. And I laughed. And I went, yous are the exact people that, that we thought you were. The Macallan people of the world that go, but it's expensive because it's the best. That's nonsense. That's utter nonsense. There's nothing can be the best because it's so subjective. Everything that I've said tonight means nothing technically because it's subjective. It's my opinion. But we don't talk about these guys in positive terms. Now, we, the whiskey community, in the world of whiskey sales and stuff like that, and I should have mentioned this probably earlier on, it's something that you already know. I mean, it's not something that it's nothing new, is that we don't really matter to the Edringtons, to the Diageos, to the Grants, etc., etc. They're not making whiskey for us. They're not making whiskey for whiskey enthusiasts. They're making whiskey for consumers. These guys are making whiskey for the rich. They're making whiskey and telling the world that they make the best whiskey in the world, and there are enough people out there to believe it. So, from a marketing point of view, fair play to them. It's very hard to deny that they haven't got that one nailed down. We, the whiskey community, see it different. We see it from a different point of view. We look at it and say, in my opinion, once again, and say, well, if I'm going to spend my money, that money, what else could I get? And the answer is technically the world's your oyster. Did I write anything down? I didn't actually. I didn't because, well, I have a bottle here, and you'll probably actually maybe know what bottle it is. So as soon as it comes out, you'll see it. But I'm going to go back into the chat a little bit quickly because there's probably been a lot of chat about what Macallan do. Campbelltown Lock in the glass. I mean, you buy 2 of these. You buy 2.5 of these for the price of that Macallan. Macallan, the Floridian flex of choice, per buggers, says Phil. Campbelltown Lock is £40 in the UK. I know that's the thing, Ben. Great price for us, but Sugar Kitty, Jeff said it's the same distillery that makes Pat. We makes Weller side by side, and it's $45 compared to exactly the Weller Antiques. Fantastic. Look, even same distillery, even Eagle Rare. We get people coming over here and going, I can't get my hands. We can't buy Eagle Rare in the US. Okay, and they're leaving here from our Tesco, from our supermarket, with armfuls of this stuff, which is $35 or £35 a bottle. So it's a weird thing. Barry Coleman, I knew I'd seen something earlier on. Are you getting the ferry over to Campbelltown and joining the show with the Côte d'Rône? There's a boat they're running. So the Harbour View Hotel, those guys have bought a boat, so they're running a boat back and forward. So yes, technically ferry, but it's their own little private boat. It's only 10 seater. Let's see. Every time I am invited to put in for a draw. I pick up Happy Van Winkle 15 because if I can buy one, this is dollar past 10. If I can buy one for retail, I could flip it and use the money to buy 5 bottles of Scotch that are 25 years old. Your honor, here, can't fault you for that one, Tim. Can't fault you for that one. Phil said Macallan 12-year-old Sherry Oak is $90 here. Walk away. The 12-year-old Sherry Oak is a 110 proof. $120, no brainer, actually pretty solid value. And as I said at the start, it annoys me a little that because the first thing I did when I was sitting down tonight was pour another little sip of that Macallan. And I remember whenever I met Bud Jenkins we're going back a few years now, Bud, in Belfast, and we were discussing how Macallan is, it's good enough whiskey, and it is. That's the annoying thing where Macallan's concerned, because it is actually, it's not bad, but it's the price that they ask, and I think that's the annoying bit. Sandy McDonald, thanks for an excellent Vpub. Duff should be worried. I don't think so. I think he's all right. I think he's safe. Ben's off. Cheers for keeping the pub open. I'll be on the bond tomorrow. It's launch it all. So Ben's going to be in the bond for the last night of the bond. So sorry, I'm going to miss that. So I did say I was keeping a clean glass. Well, it wasn't clean. It was one that had the sherry in it, and I had rinsed it, but it was just I noticed it was still. Yeah, you could still smell the sherry of it. So that was why I didn't pour the Campbelltown lock in it, because I didn't want to worry it. Graham Young saying Macallan, curiously small stills, fantastically large margins. Indeed. Look, Thompson Brothers, TBSW. Now, we know the stories of this and Macallan. This is 35 quid. £35, bottled at 46%, a blended Scotch whisky. Yes, it is. But, I mean, most of us know the story with the Thompson brothers and the casks that they bought, etc., etc. What went on there. I would not even attempt to read that. I mean, even if I held that up, everything will go blurry here. I know for a fact it will. I mean, my camera currently is a bit like my eyesight at my age, and my arms just aren't long enough to read the things now. Tom Freeney, apologies. We're in different places. I'm finishing the night with a Kilkerran port pipe bought from the warehouse tasting. Wow. Nice one, Tom. Nice one, mate. So, yeah, I mean, this was, say, 35 quid, blended Scotch. Great, incredibly great whiskey. It really is. Sadly now, pretty much gone. But I said it sort of the same. There you go. Donner Pass, Tim saying the most recent video from Phil and Simon, they mentioned the farewell bottling of TBSW is coming soon. It will be 8-year-old. There you go. It's just the quality of it. And once again, I said it, there's nothing wrong with Macallan, really, necessarily. It's just, once again, a bit like what I said about Bushmills, and I'm being careful when I say it, that I would rather see something bottled at a higher ABV, more natural, and give us the quality that you have. Put it at our doorstep, the whiskey enthusiast doorstep, the whiskey community. Reach it to us and say, look, here's what we can do, and maybe get us the whiskey community talking about these whiskies again, just because we know that in cases the quality can be there. And the quality is 100% there. Do you know what I'm going to do? Just for experiment's sake, I'm going to throw a little drop of Macallan 12-year-old in along with the Thompson Brothers. It was a little more than I expected. It came out a bit quicker than I thought, but just to see what happens. Because I do know, as I say, that Macallan is actually, I know that having tasted it, that it's there, even bottled at 40%. But it could be so much better if it was bottled even 43, but give us 46 and we'll work with it. It's intense. It's weird. There's that little rubbery note off it. Yeah. I don't know why. Well, I do. And I'm answering my own question. I said it earlier on that it's and I hear it more with the Middleton buyers, the Middleton drinkers. It's the best whiskey in the world. It's so smooth. It just, oh man, it's I honestly, I am cringing. There's parts of me puckering up that shouldn't be puckering up when I hear it. And the same gets said about Macallan. And I just think to myself, just if only we, the whiskey community. But then I was going to say, if only we, the whiskey community, were sort of more of a voice, and these people, the Macallans and the Middletons and the Pappies of this world. But then I also say to myself, maybe we wouldn't enjoy this whiskey community, the whiskey world, as much as we do if all of these guys were making whiskey for us. So it's better, I think. It's better, I think, to have our own community and be our own thing. Because at the end of the day, if I wouldn't have been sitting here tonight getting frustrated about this stuff if it was all fantastic and it was all made for us and it was all a great price. Ben's saying before he goes, Campbelltown Lock is currently £35.99 on Aberdeen Whiskey Shop. Well, sure, you couldn't beat that. It's very difficult to beat. And I would suggest, and I'm only putting it out there, it was only my opinion, but most of what I was offering tonight as alternatives are hard to beat. You know, even the Edredor 2, which, you know, I could take or leave. But I mean, when you put most of what Signatory Vintage are heavily, you know, the heavily sherry casked 100 proof series, put any one of them almost up against Macallan, and once again, look at what they're doing with the Speyside Distillery. You know, so it's being independently bottled, and once again, we know that it's good stuff anyway. At this point where Macallan's concerned, it comes down to price, and it comes down. And when yes. I will say it once again, that the quality, I believe where Macallan is concerned, the quality is there on show, but you pay an absolute premium for it. And that's where I then step away and say, no, not me. I won't do it. Yeah. That works really well. Drop of the old Thompson Brothers. Drop of the old expensive Macallan sprinkled in on top. And it actually does work very, very well. Folks, the chat, I 2 hours was pretty much my goal for tonight. And there we are at just about 2 hours. So I am delighted. I also really enjoyed that. I've I've enjoyed myself in the last 2 hours much more than I expected to, for the simple fact that the chat in the chat room was fantastic. Thank you so much for everything you brought to this, because it wouldn't have lasted for 2 hours had you not. And it's one of the things that I love about this whiskey community, is that we are so passionate about this, about this thing that we love, the water of life. And it's generally more leaning toward the Scotch whisky end of things, although we all have our little dabbles in, be it bourbon or Irish, and all sorts of whiskey from all over the world. But it's one of the other reasons why I love the Scotch whisky community, and I've said this many times in the past. I feel that the Scotch whisky community is more open to trying other whiskies. Roy coined the term, and I use it regularly: whiskey promiscuity. Be whiskey promiscuous. Try other things. It generally raises a laugh whenever I say it at whiskey tastings, but there's a lot of truth in it. And I do believe that the Scotch whisky community are better at it than the more sort of secular whiskey communities, be it American or Irish or Japanese or Canadian, or that when you focus on your country's whiskey, or the country that you feel patriotic toward, then other people tend to sit in the shadows. Whereas where I do believe the Scotch whisky community are much more open to trying other whiskies from around the world and being open and honest about them. And when they discover something of beauty, they're quite happy to say that, okay, it might not be Scotch, but I still love it. And what's wrong with that? That's what it's all about, in my opinion. Patriotism's for sport. It shouldn't be for whiskey. I've been shot down for using that term in the past, but it's just the way I feel. Just the way I feel. So I'll wrap it up at that. Richard News. Cheers, Jimmo. Oh, Richard. What twins to my back there. James Morgan, thanks, my friend. Whiskey and Wine Trails. Cheers, Jim. Safe travels. Thank you, Tom. So, as I say, plan is Campbelltown Saturday, Glasgow Sunday. Never know who I'll bump into, and I'm really looking forward to it. Graham Young, Jim, you're doing such a great job with your channel and content, buddy. Hats off to you, Graham. Appreciate it, my friend. I genuinely do. Greg's Whiskey Guide, our pleasure too. Thank you, Greg. Jane Kelly, I will see you. I'll see you again, if not later this year, certainly at some point. I know I will. Thanks again for stepping up and making it a special time together. Barry Coleman, Whiskey Novice, great chat. Continue talking. Love trying all whiskies. Good man, good man. Whiskey with Molly. Thanks, Jim. Just spent £130 on Campbelltown Lockleigh Single Estate, Dark Briar, and Williams, the 13-year-old blended malt from Living Souls. I blame you. I didn't blame me. I mean, at the end of the day, I didn't mention any of them. Although the Campbelltown Lock, yes, okay. Mr. Lachlan McKenzie. Mr. Lachlan McKenzie, thank you. And good night. Jeff Sanchevar. I will see you all soon again on some sort of flip side, as the kids are saying. And I look forward to it. I will say it once again. I'm pleased that I managed to get that wrapped up in 2 hours without a quiz. And my wife will be pleased as well. Listen, folks, you look after yourselves. Always, always a pleasure. You are the best people in the world. You're the best community in the world. And I don't just say that. I don't just drop that out there. I genuinely mean it. It's when I talk about the whiskey community, I'm talking about you lot. You are. I was going to use a profanity to call it, but it was a top end profanity. It was a positive profanity, but I'm not. because some people might pick it up wrong. But you are the best. You genuinely are, I think. And I say it regularly. I tell people that are getting into their whiskey journey and stuff. And the first thing I say is reach out, find somebody in the whiskey community who lives close to you. And then all of a sudden you'll find people all over the world, whether they're living close to you or not, and you will become friends with them. I have made some of the best friends in my life out of this whiskey community. And it means the world to me. So that was nothing to do with what I was talking about earlier on, but that sort of. Either way, I'll jog on now before I keep talking. Slán and see you all again. Look after yourselves. Cheers.